What's going on, everyone? Tim from... Good Lord. Let's try that again. What's going on, everybody? Tim from Tirfon Orbital. So we're going to do a quick... Actually, this will be a little bit more in-depth than my regular videos because this particular install does have a custom chassis. And there are some unique onboard lights on this chassis. I mean, that's kind of what I do now, I guess. So we'll talk about those. And we'll also do a quick demo. Right, so we're just going to kind of jump right into it. I do want to talk about this particular hilt first, and then we'll talk about the chassis, right? So this is a Malgus from Korbanth. Now, initially, the client sent me this hilt. The client purchased the hilt used, so it was already weathered by the previous owner, or the previous owner had it weathered by somebody, but the client was very specific and adamant that they wanted a broken Malgus that looked very similar to the Malgus from Knights of the Old Republic. And the Knights of the Old Republic, Star Wars the Old Republic video game, rather, right? So the client did provide some... They're not really renders. I mean, I'm assuming that these are pictures from like promotional material, but the client really wanted something reminiscent of this particular hilt from the game, right? So what that entailed for me was some significant body mods, right? So we're talking about, like, you know, to break these blades. The blades are you know, almost 1/4 of an inch thick. So I had to take a grinder to these blades and make them look broken. And there was also some, you know, unique Greeblies that were on the hilt as well from the renders. So I tried to replicate that look as best I could with some handmade, some brass parts and some copper stuff. So we'll talk about that as well when we go over the external of the hilt. But yeah, some definite custom body mods. I did some custom stuff to the grip as well. So we'll talk about that when we do an up close, right? So let's talk about the chassis first. This is the chassis that I designed for this hilt. Okay, so my typical Greebly work along the outside. I actually, you know, this grip, I had plenty of room in this grip. This is actually, what do we have? Yeah, we had like almost 27 millimeters worth of space to play with on this chassis, right? So plenty of Greebly work. I actually did do some accents on the inside of the Proffie board tray. So the Proffie board sits here. Okay, the Proffie board does slide inside of this channel. It kind of, I wouldn't say holds it in place, but it kind of pressure fits it in place here. Did some venting here, just decorative stuff, right? So all kinds of Greebly work, plenty of room for... So in this particular build, I did do a speaker pod in the pommel, right? So at the bottom here is where I created a cap that holds the 2-conductor PCB pin for the speaker in the pommel, right? These 3 channels here all hold Edison filaments. The client really wanted some Edison filaments on this. They did see a previous install that I did utilizing some of those Edison filaments. So I put 3 of those on board the chassis here, and up top is just where I make my splicing to the upper part of the hilt itself. This is a stationary chassis, so it just kind of sits in place. It doesn't remove, it's not removable or anything like that. Kill switch is here, and that's pretty much it, right? Nice and simple. So let's talk about the hilt itself. Okay, so here is, let's get a light on this. So here's the hilt. Okay, so as I said, the hilt came to me pre-weathered. So this was already, it looked like, you know, whomever did it did a pass of aluminum black, and it was just, you know, nicely weathered, just regularly. It was just a nice weathering job, right? The client really wanted that broken Malgus look from the promotional pictures, right? So what I ended up doing was up at the top here, this is just a brass bar that I heat stained. So, you know, I will say this is like a tip that I've learned in working with brass Greeblies. Thicker brass, to make brass easier to work with, what I like to do is I heat treat the brass prior to working with it, right? So I take, like this bar, I took it to a blowtorch until it was red hot, and then I quenched it, right? And what that does is it breaks down the molecular structure of the brass and makes it more malleable. It makes it easier to work with. It makes it more bendy. So that's a quick tip that I don't think I've mentioned before. So this is just a brass bar that's in place. I've got some copper, solid copper wire here. There are some small wire accents that I put in place. So these are like transistors. I did see these on the promotional pictures. These are just, I created these in Fusion and printed them off in resin and then painted them. Just some simple accents. I couldn't find fuses or transistors that were that perfect size, so I just went ahead and made my own, right? So, sorry, we'll start at the bottom. So like I said, this is a speaker pod setup. So the speaker pod sits in this pommel, and it just lives in there. This is a 28 millimeter bass speaker from Smugglers Outpost. So I just created a speaker pod that just lives in the pommel, right? The grip. So the promotional pictures show a really unique grip. It looks like worn leather, okay? And it's got a really, really unique shape. I was not able to achieve that, obviously. I don't have the tools here to do like a vacuum formed leather wrap, okay? So the client did provide some black leather that I cut in strips and wrapped. Now, before I wrapped this, I'm not sure that you can tell, but if I get like a top down, there's like a triangular shape to this grip, right? So I did that just to make it a little bit more unique, to make it look a little different than just a regular round grip. And the way I achieved that is underneath the grip, I just made some resin spacers. I just designed like a spacer in Fusion and glued them to the bare grip and then wrapped over it. So it gives it that unique triangular grip, right? And then just wrapped it in leather. And I did try to weather the leather a little bit. The promotional pictures, it really honestly looks like fake leather, right? Because what you get with like patent leather, it's basically like a suede or something that's been painted black, or it's been treated black, and then like as you weather it, you see that tan underneath, right? So this is actually like real leather that's been dyed, so it's black all the way through. So I wasn't able to weather it to get that tan look underneath, but I did weather it a little bit with some scouring pads just to make it look a little beat up, right? Making our way up. I mean, I talked about the Greeblies already. So the blades, right? The blades were a little bit difficult to work with. So this is pretty thick aluminum. I took an angle grinder to this, honestly. Like I just tore it up with an angle grinder and then broke this bigger one. In the promotional pictures, it almost looks like these external blades have been stitched with some brass or some metal. So these are just brass rods. So I gouged slits in these blades and then affixed some brass rods that I then shaved down to make them a little bit more flush. And that's how I achieved that look. So there's just a bunch of nicks and gouges in the blades. The client really, really wanted something that looked like it'd been beaten up, right? And that's pretty much it, right? So let's talk about how to use this guy. Here is the chassis. Okay, as I said, it's a stationary chassis. It lives in the hilt, right? Proffie board sits here. Here's those Edison filaments, okay? So to use your hilt, you want to keep in mind this is the spring side negative. So take the flat part of your battery, put it in the tray. So this is already, it was already on. You're not going to hear an audible cue because the speaker pod is not making a connection to the chassis yet, right? So, but there's those Edison filaments, different animations for when the blade is on and when it is off. When it is off, it'll just do like a slow pulse, okay? So, you put your battery in, turn it on, put your grip back on. And then you put your speaker pod in. Now the timing, the clocking and all that is perfect with this speaker pod, so you just kind of screw it in until it stops, and then you're ready to go. So let's come down here. Yeah, I'm really happy with the way that grip came out. It feels really, really rad. I've never felt like a triangular grip like that, so I do something different. I couldn't really achieve that exact same look as the render pictures, but I think it's different, right? Let's put a blade in it. So here we go. As always, just take your blade, kind of rest it on those PCB pins. There is a silver set screw up top here. Just tighten your set screw till it hugs the blade. Ready to go. Twist to activate, twist to deactivate is all on. Bottom button.
Ancient integration.
Bottom button is your aux, top is your main. Man, this is ancient integration, the font. I really, really dig the out font sound on this, the ignition sound, basically. Sounds rad. Let's do that again. It sounds really, really rad. I really like that. So at the client's request, I put a bunch of just like dark side related fonts on this. One more.
Third sister.
It shouldn't be yellow, should it? Let's see if we can change the color on that. That's better.
Binary. The dark side. My master.
All right, so it's easy for me to get carried away. So anyway, that's a nice quick rundown on this Korbanth Malgus. I don't even know that you could call it a Korbanth Malgus anymore. It's been bastardized so much that it's its own thing now. So anyway, if anyone has any questions about this particular install or the chassis or anything really, don't be a stranger to the client as always. Thank you very much for your business. Thank you for trusting me with your hilt. And with that being said, may the force be with you, always. Thanks for watching, everybody.